This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Spock becomes huge and large.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show putting humanities into science fiction. My name is Gepwin, and I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi.
And this week we watched a weird one. It wasn't bad. I've heard this one was bad. I kind of liked it.
I thought it was very silly, but it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far that's been the general... In any good episode of animated series is like it wasn't that bad. Weird, but you know.
But this one has sort of a reputation as being just kind of awful. But I guess maybe it's not totally deserved. But yeah, it's goofy Star Trek the Animated Series, kind of in its most goofiness.
It has some kind of goofy ideas. And it has the distinction of having been written by one of the original cast members, well, semi-original cast members, was written by Walter Koenig, who, of course, played Chekhov.
If I recall, there was quite a hoopla as far as even getting the draft of this sorted out, because there was issues with, so okay, we want this to happen, says Gene Roddenberry, and there has to be plant aliens here. And Walter Koenig's like, okay, I guess I'll get that in here, and we'll see what we can do. And 10 or 11 drafts later, ... they had a script. Now, this isn't Walter Koenig's only writing credit for TV stuff. He's also done some random episodes of stuff that I mostly haven't heard of, but he did. But one of the things I have heard about is Land of the Lost. He wrote one episode of that in the mid-70s.
Yeah, which I always enjoyed Land of the Lost as a dumb TV show.
Silly, kind of like this episode.
But apparently he wasn't even intending to necessarily write for the animated series. He didn't even find out the animated series was happening, apparently, until he heard of it and announced at a Star Trek convention he was at.
Wait, one moment. What's this now?
Then found out that he wasn't in it, which is great.
But everyone else was.
Because of budget concerns.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, there was just... Apparently, a lot of the animated series had Roddenberry's classic interference, but to add things that he felt you could only do in animation.
Which I guess is fair to a certain extent, but also Gene Roddenberry has been kind of very interfering with writers before for a very long time.
I'm not sure what made you think you could only do plant aliens in animation when you drew them this way, because
yes,
you could put an asparagus costume on an actor. I don't see why you couldn't.
I guess to a certain extent, they could have just looked over what was happening on Doctor Who in the UK, like all throughout this time period, and say, oh, it might look a little silly, but we can actually do this like on the cheap. So
isn't this the Doctor Who era of green spray painted bubble wrap?
Something like that. It's late Pertwee or early Tom Baker? I forget. Oh, anyway.
So yeah, we have Plant Aliens written by Walter Koenig, who also apparently even on Land of the Lost, he included a reference to his own name because he does this. Apparently, there's one in here. One of the aliens is called a Wurtlaw, which is
Walter backward.
He pulls an Alucard.
Alucard, this is Neela, Alucard, alien, Dracula. Oh no!
All right, that's all. We could read the Wikipedia page about the production more, but
well, I will say that Walter Koenig eventually did get his revenge by playing Alfred Bester on Babylon 5, where he got to be as sort of cruel and evil as possible, and as to, I guess, counteract the vibe of suffering through this, I guess.
That's always fun in sci-fi characters.
Because he's kind of like a nice guy in Star Trek. In Babylon 5, it's the opposite. I just really like the character Bester. He's a good villain.
Koenig did audition to play the guest star in this episode, but they decided that instead of hiring someone, they would just have James Doohan do the voice again.
Yep. So once again, we have no guest stars other than the main cast reprising themselves in different roles. So James Doohan is Agmar and Stavros Caniculus 5 and Spock and Spock 2. Spoilers.
So the Enterprise has arrived at a recently discovered planet on the far edges of the galaxy where Kirk, McCoy, and Sulu beam down to perform a planetary survey.
Cool. So this is going to be an easy mission where we just sort of scan things and leave, and hopefully we're not going to have any, like, wax nice stabbing McCoy this time, right?
Yeah, and McCoy doesn't get stabbed. There's that.
Yes.
So this planet is super lush and filled with green and plants and things, and also grand, swoopy, inhuman architectural buildings.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet, actually. I wouldn't mind, at least visiting there.
Also, at one point, the sun winks at Sulu, and it's not important. It's never explained, and it means nothing. It just happens.
Well, maybe the sun's a Cepheid variable with a very strange timing on it.
So Spock reads some power readings coming from that building.
The big one,
I just liked this because they're showing them all in their classic animated series, we don't want to add color to this scene, silhouettes that aren't moving. And the line is, there's power coming from that building.
Okay, which building?
Yeah, they're standing in front of an array of like 20 or 30 buildings. And the characters don't move or gesticulate or gesture or point or do anything.
Well, maybe Spock is pointing with his nose, man. And Kirk just knows that because reasons.
Sulu also finds a small purple little tree-looking thing, but it moves. It's an animate plant species.
It's adorable. It's like a tribble, but with legs.
Yeah, it crawls around and then re-roots itself and then gets up and crawls around. Sulu, of course, touches it, because they do this.
Yeah,
then gets
plant,
hurt. Like, he gets stung or thorned by the thing and then drops it, because why you go to a completely alien planet and the first thing you always do is start touching everything.
Yes. Well, it's already been established in in the original series. Sulu does have a thing for plants, and he maybe gets gaga over plants, I guess.
Yeah, but you guys don't even wear isolation suits or gloves. You just start touching things.
Yeah, I guess this isn't the Enterprise era, which is before this, where they concerned about that all the time.
Yeah, I will admit, I grew up in the Sonoran Desert. I learned very early on as a child, you don't touch random plants.
Because some of them are kind of nasty.
Most of them are nasty. Most of them will hurt you. So maybe I'm just coming from this biased childhood of like, don't touch stuff if you don't know what it is.
I guess to a certain extent, growing up in Iowa, there was a certain level of that, but we also knew what a lot of the plants were, because it's like, well, that's corn. That's more corn. There's some grass over there. There's a tree. Then some more corn. Oh, hey, soybeans.
Did they have a whole section in like preschool on don't put your hands somewhere you can't see because that's where all the snakes and spiders live?
Not specifically, but I guess, just sort of be careful and don't put your fingers in weird things.
So that generally is just an Arizona thing. They specifically taught us how to like flip over rocks safely if you needed to, because there might be a snake under it.
I'm guessing lift it up with the the far side first, so it would go that way if it wants to run somewhere.
Toe of your boot. Use the toe of your boot and lift it up on the far side. Just don't get your fingers near it.
Yes. You want to keep those safe.
So anyway, this is why I keep harping on how they keep touching plants.
Yes.
Stop touching it. You don't know if it's got thorns or poisons or...
And especially because we, seeing this as viewers, cannot tell if it has thorns because it's just a big fuzzy blob.
Mm-hmm. So everyone else has moved off to explore, and they find a building filled with technology and force fields and city-protecting doodahs and things.
I guess this is a scientifically advanced culture of some sort. Neato.
Way more scientifically advanced than anything they've ever seen.
Wait, have we met sufficiently advanced aliens, or where are they actually?
Spock does detect a humanoid life sign that's huge and massive and big. But just then Sulu yells and they all leave to find him lying face down in the grass.
Oh no, Sulu, did you get attacked by a salt malt vampire or something like that?
McCoy identifies that he has been poisoned, but he can't readily identify the toxin to create a counteragent. With only minutes for Sulu to live, some green tentacle aliens appear, and they go, hey, we've seen this before, let us, stick him with my little tendril doodah.
Yeah, so, Sulu, it's gonna save your life, but it's time for the tentacles again, sorry.
He was stung by the bush thing, so the rat claw, we're gonna have to unpoison him. We've seen this before, it's fine.
Yeah.
And according to Spock's scans, the aliens are in fact plants. Intelligent, mobile plants.
I have this expansion for Stellaris. Neat.
Yeah, that was always a fun one.
I once played some plants that had the one event chain that, you talk to, a black hole and, rewrite history and stuff. It's weird. So I became a different kind of plant.
Oh. I always liked playing as the consuming carnivorous plant maw Unimind.
I should do that sometime.
Makes the game very boring. Cuts off literally all political options.
Yeah. So it's very much a internal management system. Mm-hmm. Speaking of internal management, how's Sulu's internal management system going?
He wakes up in minutes because their medicine and technology is just so good. It's hard to tell if it's technology or if it's just something that the plants themselves secrete. They keep saying your medical technology is amazing. So I guess it's that.
Yeah, but it's the plant guy just hangs at one of his little tentacle fingers and is dripping a little doodah of the stuff at the end of it. It's it's not really a medical device. It just seems to be hanging out on his finger.
Yeah. So the leader is called Agmar, and he knows a thing or two about humanoids because they've seen humanoids before.
Oh, cool. Wait, are you guys being harassed by Vulcans?
Maybe.
Spock, what are you doing here again?
Kirk says, I don't like mysteries. Where are your people? It's wait, what? Where did this come from? What mysteries? Why do you assume that they're hiding their people from you? This is out of nowhere, Kirk.
Okay, so you land on this planet where you don't know anyone, and you've only seemed to manage to lure out some people after a life and death situation because they have compassion for one of your compatriots, and you're freaking out, where's everyone hiding? It's well, maybe they were hiding from you guys.
Yeah,
because maybe. They don't know you, but their compassion was just strong enough to overcome some of that, at least a few of them. So
that Agmar takes them to see their hall of giant dead mummified ancestors.
Oh, they have one of those too?
Yeah. It's a long hallway filled with giant versions of what we are calling the Philosians.
Well, these dudes, I guess this means that these are the children?
Yeah, this is the generation before. Agmar and everybody are their kids. They were super young when a human came and accidentally infected them all with a disease.
Oh no.
But he also helped them find a cure later.
Oh, well, that was nice of him, but it was only after everyone else was dead. Oh gosh.
Just then, some big purple pterodactyls with wiggly tentacles swoop in.
These things are very silly.
Yeah, they are.
So, the tentacles are like springs at times and kind of just all over the place and make no biological sense at all.
Yeah, and how are these plants? They don't look like plants. They just have little springy tentacle doodahs.
This is an example of cheap animation being cheap.
In the transcript, they're called swoopers. I recently had someone suggest that they should be called phytodactyls. Which is what I'm going to go with now.
Right, the phytodactyls.
Kirk tries to shoot one, but his phaser doesn't work, and Agar announces that they're actually in a building with a weapons dampener, so good luck with that.
So how do we deal with these guys? Do we ignore them? Do we hide? Do we bust out the batleth here? What's up?
The phytodactyls just restrain them all, and then fly off with Spock.
More tentacle action, though. Keeps happening.
Agmar apologizes, but the kidnapping of Spock is somehow necessary because he's this perfect specimen that the Master's been looking for.
Okay, so you just sort of hijack Spock here, and I thought you guys were cool.
Yeah.
Are you just going to be we're going to keep doing things, not telling you what's up or asking your permission or consent or anything like that. We're just going to be jerk faces like this.
Yeah.
Why can't we go anywhere nice?
The phytodactyls fly off. Kirk attacks Agram for kidnapping Spock, but then the Master appears, who is a literal giant.
So I'm guessing the gravity on this planet's kind of low, because this guy is huge.
This guy he's at least 3 times the size of a normal human.
He's going to be like 30 feet tall or something.
Mm-hmm. This is Dr. Stavros Kanikulis 5. And he demands they return to their ship because I'm sorry, but I just need Spock.
Well, are you going to give him back? What's up?
No, just go. Bye-bye.
Just go away. I do not care about you or your concerns, and you're probably going to try to interfere with my plans, but, go away.
With nothing they can actually do, Kirk agrees to leave Spock behind, very reluctantly and sadly. Beam us up.
Now, if Scotty was on the landing team, he would have figured out a daring plan to, confront the giant, and there'd be an action scene where they run under his legs and grab his giant weird staff thingamajig, and all sorts of cool stuff would happen because Scotty is the most competent member of the crew, and he would his presence there would demand such action.
Yeah.
He wasn't there, so
hung onto the bottom of a sheep and escaped and done other things with giants. Stolen
action
a goose.
Scotty.
Back on the ship, they have no sensor readings on Spock, Kanikulis, or the Philosians. Everyone's gone.
So either they're all dead, or they're hiding in some sort of sensor-proof bunker of some sort. Well, they're probably dead. Let's go.
Scotty's working on some sort of special equipment. McCoy wants to make his great-great-granddaddy's super gardening recipe from the ancient South.
Yeah, because in the ancient South, it was well understood that all plants were the enemy.
Yes. And Uhura has found some information in the ship's computer on Kanikulis.
So is he some sort of Romulan interloper, a Klingon spy, or? So
Stavros Kanikulis was a old Earth scientist during the Eugenics War.
Dun dun dun. So this was like Khan's uncle or something like that, I guess?
Or possibly rival. His plan was to clone a perfect human specimen into a new master race.
And I guess that's what he's trying to do here still?
Yeah, I guess. So, he was laughed out of the scientific community at the time, because, genetically modified super soldiers, fine, but genetically modified giant clones? I scoff at thee.
So we got our normal, Supermen who are 10 times the strength of normal men, but these guys have that plus another 10 times the strength, and also they're huge.
So this, reminds everyone of old stories of a man who wanders the galaxy looking for someone special, just in time for Valentine's Day.
Hooray! And it would have only been better if it was also Valentine's Day. Oh, wait, it was? Hooray!
This is going to come out at least 4 weeks after Valentine's Day, but it's Valentine's Day for us.
Yes, so we can have all the references we like, and we're going to enjoy it.
You listen, next year, go back, listen to this on Valentine's Day, it'll make sense.
Fine.
Even though this was over 200 years ago, Kanikulis could have been cloning himself over and over, which is why he introduced himself as Kanikulis 5.
So, wait a moment. Does he have a clone army?
No, just one at a time, apparently.
Is he going to go kill all the Jedi?
Maybe. When was the last time you even saw a Jedi?
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't think they're president of the Federation anymore.
Kirk, Sulu, and McCoy prepare to beam down with a rescue party armed with all their new info about giant clones. Scotty's made some new toys, which look like weird 3-pronged spray gun doodahs.
We got some sort of tuning fork device. Cool.
And McCoy's made his gardening concoction.
McCoy, I hope this isn't just like weed or something like that.
It might be. On the planet, they find a few more phytodactyls, and that's it. They're like, oh, these things are dumb. Moving on.
Yeah, so I guess they're not being controlled, and thus they ignore us. So, okay.
Then they find the Philosians pulling Ivy off of some ancient spaceships, preparing them for some sort of planetary exodus or some such. Kirk finds Agmar and takes him hostage so that he can explain the backstory.
Oh, so what's your backstory here? You guys like peaceful explorers until this guy shows up and like kills off your almost your entire species with a plague here?
So far, we've got that they are a dying race because the disease killed off the older generation, but also it left the younger generation with no ability to reproduce. So Caniculus is going to carry on their great work and mission, which is what the spaceships were for, but he doesn't elaborate. He's just like, oh, you guys are worried about your friend. I'll take you to him and show you he's fine.
Well, thank you. You seem weirdly reasonable all of a sudden.
He leads them to some underground tunnels where they are attacked by more phytodactyls. They escape to some sort of laboratory where they find Spock laying in a glass case. Also, they find Mega Spock.
He's also huge and large. He's standing above them, just kind of standing there looking at them, watching, I guess.
Yeah, he's the same size as Caniculus.
Oh, I guess Caniculus now has someone to play chess with that's of the same size.
Yeah, giant chess. I always wondered who they made those giant garden-sized chess sets for. Now you know.
Now we know.
So, now it's too late. He's like, it's too late to save Spock. His mind's been transferred to Mega Spock. This will save the galaxy.
Well, so what's your actual plan here? You say this is going to be a good thing. It's going to be helping lots of people, but why do you need a giant clone of Spock exactly?
We'll get to that. First, my favorite scene, and we need some gifs from this. We did put them up, because they all put on masks. They all put on Corona masks.
Yes. So wear your masks, everybody.
Yeah, wear your masks. We need, like, pictures of Kirk and McCoy. It's like, wear your masks. We need this. I want one. They use these because they're spraying their spray guns at the phytodactyls who go away because apparently McCoy made homemade herbicide.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And so the phytodactyls are like, oh, we're dying and we're gonna like lay here and not try to kill you anymore.
Safe for the minute. They try to save Spock, but Mega Spock blocks them.
Dang it, Mega Spock.
Apparently the thing here is that he can copy the clone. He can make an exact duplicate of a adult humanoid, but he can't copy knowledge. So that's what's being transferred, but this is going to kill original Spock, and Mega Spock's become like slowly more sentient as we've gone along here.
Oh, wait a moment. Haven't we been to a planet before where there was a transfers of consciousness between a human and like a duplicate of them that left the original person intact? Can we just go look them up again and help you out?
But you destroyed the robot place.
Oh, yeah.
Because the guy was mean and you didn't like Lurch.
Well, I guess that sucks to be us then.
So on the ship, they've found some vital information, apparently, and Scotty has to use almost all the ship's power to send Kirk a message because they're so deep underground in this lab. They're able to get them the vital information that Caniculus in his later writings wrote about using his master race as a galactic peacekeeping organization.
So you wanted to make Starfleet before there was a Starfleet?
Yeah, super police.
But like with giant clones of people with, super strength, super minds, whatever.
Yeah. So knowing this now, Kirk points out to Caniculus that this is a waste of time because the Federation is already at peace and has been for about 100 years.
And plus, the Zentradi have already come and gone by this point. Come on.
He doesn't believe them because there was a eugenics war and a galactic war and a Klingon war and a Romulan war.
What about the psychic wars?
Didn't mention the psychic wars.
I guess not everyone's a veteran of the psychic wars.
Are we in Babylon 5 territory again?
No, I'm actually referencing a Blue Oyster Cult song.
Okay. So all of these things he believes that the peacekeeping force is still needed because there's still wars. They're in the middle of a Cold War right now with the Klingons. They just got out of the Klingon War, or they're just going to get back into the Klingon War. They may be in the middle of the Klingon War. What's our timeline here? It doesn't make any sense. We're not in the Klingon War yet. We were fighting them. Now they're in a Cold War. They're able to do the Khitomer Accords. Not the full Khitomer Accords. They have like a pre-Khitomer Accord in undiscovered country. Then I guess they go to war again because you need the Enterprise C to get destroyed to propagate the Khitomer Accords, which then you have peace by the time you get to Next Generation. So apparently there's a war between them signing the original treaty and Next Generation.
I'm not entirely sure if that's true. I think that was more of a, things were kind of cooling between the Federation and Klingons at that point, and they had kind of an unhappy peace. But with the Enterprise C like defending some, fighting off the Romulans there, the Klingons like, maybe these guys aren't so half bad here. They'll actually like help defend us and crap. So maybe we should be friends.
I think the thing we've learned here is Star Trek's never given a toss about its own timeline.
Yes.
So maybe we shouldn't either.
Ta-da!
So anyway, they need a peacekeeping organization. Agmar goes, this was our plan too. Right before the disease wiped us out, we were going to send all of our people out on ships to also be a peacekeeping force in the galaxy. Given how a normal human-carried virus like wiped out their entire population, this would not have gone well.
Nope.
First planet they show up on, it's like, oh my god, plant moss, oh, they're dead.
I wonder if perhaps the virus, I wonder if it was maybe intentional, actually.
No, they name it. It's like a normal virus that people carry.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yeah, it's a gram-positive streptococcal infection, which is bad.
What that is.
It's very bad. It's MRSA. Yeah, bad antibacterial resistant streptococcal something or other.
Ouch. Yeah, that's bad news.
I mean, not all of it is bacterial resistant. I've been learning a lot about plant viruses recently because I just started growing orchids, and like they're scary freaking things.
I think human viruses are bad. Eh?
Yeah. Plant cells are so thick that a plant virus is like 20 times as bad, and there's no way to get rid of them or cure them. It's like just keep your plant as far away from other plants as humanly possible.
And hope for the best.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anyway, they're going to like impose peace on the galaxy, which is a fun concept.
So you're basically going to conquer the galaxy.
Yeah, but peacefully.
Well, you don't really need to anymore, guys. Things are cool now.
Yeah, Kirk goes, hey, the Federation agreed on peace. No one imposed peace on us. Also, he starts to address Mega Spock about Vulcan philosophy, which isn't well defined. He just goes, hey, you know the IDIC? And he goes, yeah, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. He goes, isn't imposing peace on people counter to the general Vulcan philosophy of the IDIC? And he goes, oh, yeah.
I guess that kind of makes sense. If we're kind of imposing peace on people, we're sort of forcing a specific, way of having peace on them, and that will destroy them, and thus there'll be less diversity. Okay, I guess that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. But Caniculus gets upset and goes, no, and smashes the weird machine thing so that they can't reverse the mind transfer.
Oh, dang it.
Which also, your animation continuity here is so screwed. They come in, Spock is laying in a little glass sarcophagus doodah. They grab him out of the sarcophagus doodah and start taking him to the door. They get blocked. Unconscious Spock is now being held by McCoy for all of these scenes where anytime McCoy says something, they show unconscious Spock laying on McCoy's lap. Later, now Caniculus breaks the thingy and Spock's back in his glass box.
Well, maybe he like climbed back in while no one was paying attention.
It's cold out here. I'm going back to bed.
I don't want to get up, Mom.
5 more minutes. I'm being mind drained. Tiring.
I need to finish this dream where my brain gets transferred to a giant clone of myself for really lame reasons.
But, Mega Spock now has an idea. He just touches normal Spock, mind melds him. They both get to keep all their brain.
My mind to your mind, and I'm copying everything back, so we're backed up. Everything's backed up properly.
Yeah, there you go. Now they're both just Spock.
Cool. So, Spock, how are you doing? I'm doing all right, Spock. How are you? I'm pretty swell as well. Let's leave these losers and take over the galaxy. No, let's not do that. Actually,
yeah. Normal Spock recommends now they don't need an army of super soldiers, which they never really resolved this. Caniculus is just like, oh, there's 2 Spocks now. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe Mega Spock and Caniculus should stay here and work on finding an actual cure for the Philosians.
Yeah, that would be nice. So they can start reproducing again, and their society is not going to die out with this generation. That'd be nice.
And Kirk's like, hey, an ancient clone of a giant eugenicist from the darkest period in Earth history working with an illegally, non-consensually cloned giant Spock? I think the Federation's going to love this. And then, this has nothing to do with anything, but it is by far the weirdest and somehow best and most sexually charged ending of any Star Trek episode.
I'm excited.
Earlier in the fight, Sulu did a body throw on one of the Philosians. Kirk goes, "Hey, Sulu, can you teach me that body throw? It might be cool." And Sulu goes, "Well, it's hard, because you have to be inscrutable." Kirk says, "But Sulu, you're the most scrutable man I know."
Dun, dun, dun!
And then Sulu winks at him, suggestively.
It's like, yes, I am, sir.
Like, yeah, I'm so scrutable.
So, probably good that they cut the episode there. And
yeah, I'm like, at this point, I'm 90% sure, even though George Takei has come out and said that, like, canonically, he doesn't think that Sulu is gay. I'm 90% sure that he and Kirk are sleeping together.
Well, Kirk's probably sleeping with everyone except, like, Uhura or something like that.
See, I'd have a lot less problem with Kirk if they made him like a Captain Jack style bi character. Just like, I'm going to flirt with everything in the galaxy.
Yeah. But now we're still in very much 60s, 70s mode here as far as, your strong male lead.
Yeah, which is just so... It's not even bi, it's just accidentally gay.
Yep.
It's like your 60s, 70s strong male heroic lead is a super gay man who just happens to sleep with women. It's weird.
Yeah. It's like, your guys, you're getting some weird trope crossover here. What is this? I don't know, but I want to see more. Anyway. But yeah, so that was the Infinite Vulcan, and so now we have a giant clone of Spock just kind of hanging on a planet somewhere that we'll just never really mention ever again. So I'd also like to, I think, point out here that once again we have a situation where an episode that is supposed to be famously bad features Spock having his mind stolen from him.
Yeah. Neither of those episodes is that bad.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, there's some weird stuff happening here. I guess that's something that happened. Sure.
Yeah, like Spock's brain wasn't good, but it was just weirdly directed. This was, I don't know what. This wasn't bad. It had some interesting ideas. Some of it was mildly nonsensical, and it kind of jumped around a bit, but it wasn't bad.
I guess as far as things we could sort of jump off about to talk about, we could talk about the eugenics stuff again. We could talk about how to bring peace to a highly divided set of peoples. We could talk about plant life forms and is it even possible for such a creature to be mobile and existing without being, self-undulating on a very fast timescale?
That one's a little weird. I mean, the plant thing's a little strange because our general definition of plant life versus animal life comes down to cellular structure.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess you could just have a slightly different cellular structure. There's no reason that this plant alien has to have the same cellular structure. But like, a plant cellular structure is so rigid that it doesn't really engender the same kind of quick movement. You don't, like, plants can move themselves,
and they do,
generally using hydraulic action. And there's let me see if I can find the name of this thing. There is a plant that moves very, very quickly. It curls up when agitated immediately.
Sort of emergency, move all the liquids and we're moving. Okay, good.
Yeah, they've done a lot of interesting, like, weird studies with this thing that prove plants have memory and some other things.
So they know who's been good to them and who's been mean.
Yeah, it's called a Mimosa pudica. I'm sorry, my Latin name pronunciation is awful. A Mimosa pudica is kind of a fern-like thing, and if you touch the leaves, they all just curl up almost immediately.
Cool.
They've actually done some research with this thing, because apparently if you drop it, it also curls up really quick. So they did some experiments with like a little kind of plant elevator They put it in a little basket and like would drop it and watch it curl up. But after a few times doing this, it knew that this kind of drop didn't also lead to immediate harm, and it stopped curling up for this stimuli.
It's like, well, I'm fine. Cool. I don't need to react, so I will save energy. Good.
And then you obviously have something like a Venus flytrap, which uses a slightly different motive force. It kind of holds itself open under tension, and when one of the interior hairs is triggered, it releases it and snaps closed, and then very slowly opens up again afterward.
And when it's closed, it does its business.
But the thing with mobile plants, all mobile plants, as far as I am aware, is that the cell structure, the rigid cell structure, doesn't like being this mobile. These bits of plants can only move a certain number of times before they become too damaged to do so, and are usually then discarded and regrown, which is fine because plants do that all the time. But it can't move back and forth as fluidly and as often as a animal being does, because the cell structures are just too rigid. It's not set up right.
Yeah, it's like if you got like an old pair of leather boots, they might fit well now. At one point, they're a lot more rigid, and at some point, they're going to be sort of so worn through that they're going to just kind of start breaking. And so you have these sort of different phases here where you kind of wear out what your actual material is, and when that is like a large section of your body, well, you might want to be careful.
So then you wind up in the kind of issue of like, what do you use to define a plant? Are they just saying that the cell structure of these things is like more animalistic, or maybe something in between that allows this kind of movement, but maybe they are photosynthetic? So they're photosynthetic organisms? Or are they carnivorous plants or something similar? They're not photosynthetic, but they still eat? It's unclear.
Yeah, it's very unclear. It's like, okay, so is it because some part of their cell structure is different or the same than Earth-like plants, or is there some sort of weird biochemical thing that they're sort of measuring here? So I guess maybe brings in the question: what even is a plant?
Well, that's your issue, isn't it? Like right now on Earth, we've divided things into three major categories of animal, plant, and fungi, because fungi don't fit anywhere.
Yeah. They're weird. They're like, we're going to be all like just kind of growing out of your sidewalk suddenly, and it's going to be great.
And a lot of it comes down to like cell structure and feeding mechanism, because animals generally are non-photosynthetic and tend to consume something else, be it a plant or another animal or just another cell, whereas most plants have the different kind of cell wall, which is much harder and tends to be a bit squarer than an animal cell. And they're largely photosynthetic. I'm not prepared to say they're 100% are, but I can't think of a non-photosynthetic plant example.
They tend towards it.
Just because I haven't done the research, maybe it is part of the general definition. But you run into a problem when you hit aliens, because they always want to fit aliens very neatly into something that we already have.
Because sci-fi might be allow us to explore all sorts of unknown things, but we still have to have some sort of connection to our modern world so people can understand. But even still, come on, guys. If we were going to break aliens, let's make them alien. Come on.
Yeah, and it is like a fun thing to talk about, especially once you get into stuff like aliens. I was kind of surprised. I'm trying not to sound mean, but I was kind of surprised because I kept hearing these stories recently where someone like learned something about how we've either changed taxonomy, like the general taxonomy of where animals go, to like show that animals and plants are related or not related to other animals and plants, and to sort of organize them scientifically. I've heard these stories recently of someone who like learned how arbitrary that is, and it kind of like made them start questioning the general idea. But like I think we need to be very clear in a scientific kind of way that these taxonomic definitions are there for us to be able to talk about stuff in an organized way. They really don't have any particular bearing on the reality of the world.
Indeed, it's very descriptive as opposed to, giving much hints of what's actually going on.
Because you kind of, like, early on, you had taxonomy based solely on appearance. It's like, this thing looks like this other thing. Like, this bird is the same color as this other bird's, and they live in a similar area, so they must be closely related. Recently, we've come in with looking at genetics, and we've also restructured things out of the classic, kingdom, phylum, species, yada-da, into a clade system, which is all genetic spread and very complicated stuff I don't fully understand. And now we're looking at it genetically and saying, well, genetically, this animal is similar to this animal, which is very different from how we used to think of it, because two animals that look almost identical are super far apart genetically speaking.
It's like convergent evolution sort of keeps happening, and then we get confused by it. Then we figured out genomes, and then we're like, oh, we're not as confused. We are still confused.
But see, we need to understand this, because when we say something like, this is what a plant is, it's because we looked at a group of living things, said they all share these general characteristics, so we're going to put them all together into one group.
What about this exception? Well, it got most of the things, so we're going to count it.
Yeah, see, we wind up with weird problems with these exceptions, and we get so married to the idea of our definitions that we try to fit exceptions into our existing definitions instead of changing our definitions to accommodate exceptions.
Yes. Which I guess in some ways it allows for the science that's being worked on using the older definitions to continue on and to still be functional as far as people coming into the field, because they're not, it's like, oh, I read this old book and it talked about all this other stuff and that's not what we learned anymore. And so there is maybe a little bit of that continuity, which is kind of nice. But at the same time, it's still very much this is becoming more and more arbitrary the more we think about it.
Yeah, and if it stops at a certain point, it just stops being useful, then you have to throw the whole system out and start over. I saw this very interesting experiment, which I'd like to see more. They should do it with kids in school. Maybe they do now. But someone got 3 actual taxonomists together, like people whose job is to figure out these things. And they gave them a bunch of candy, like, M&Ms and Skittles and hard candies and stuff. And they said, organize these taxonomically. And all 3 of them came up with a different way of organizing them.
Nice.
Like, one was like, these are all the ones, like, these ones are organized by color and then by shape and then by brand. And it's like, this guy's like, these ones are organized by brand and color. And it's like, these ones are organized by shape and texture.
So what's the ultimate truth of how candy should be organized? Kind of none of them, actually.
Mm-hmm.
How we want to talk about it and organize our thoughts.
What's the most useful thing for you? Do you have a food allergy? Because then you should organize it by ingredient.
Yes.
Are you looking for a particular flavor? Because then you should organize it by taste. Are you looking for, are you trying for brand loyalty? You should organize it by brand.
Yeah, I guess that kind of, comes to an important point there, that a lot of, taxonomy, as far as how useful it is, really needs to be attached to, some of those key items that people are using in order to differentiate different elements. I know it's kind of saying this is A equals A here sort of thing, but, it is the whole point of why we use this.
But you need that, because if you had a math system and you said A doesn't equal A, that changes all of your stuff.
Yeah, it can cause some problems. But I guess, so it is both difficult to have this sort of arbitrary system that we have to construct, make exceptions to, and modify over time. Because now you have to maintain this whole system that, all right, now part of your work is doing research is going to be maintaining the system as opposed to actually pushing the envelope of research. But at the same time, it still is very useful in helping keep the pushing the envelope research organized, so you can actually make sense of things when you're trying to relate it to previous research. So continuity of science, that's good.
Yes. I think we should at least touch on, we spent way longer talking about taxonomy than I thought we would. We should at least touch on the grand plan here. The whole, let's ignore all the eugenicsy stuff for a while. We spent a long time talking about eugenics in the space seed episode.
Yes.
It doesn't work.
Yes, it's a bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. It's 100% just based on racist assumptions that we're masquerading as science. So, like, if someone says eugenics anything, stop listening to them immediately. They don't know what they're talking about.
A good rule of thumb, yes.
Like, even apart from the general racism, they just don't understand science enough to be speaking about anything.
This is something important to me. If this is what's important to you, then that's even worse than I thought.
But the general idea that they have here is having a galactic peacekeeping organization that's imposing peace on people. And imposed peace is a weird idea. Like, can you force peace? Like, technically it's peace. If you're defining peace as the opposite of war, then technically any state of existence which does not have war is peaceful.
Yes. Even if it really sucks.
You've got kind of competing theories here, and you've seen them play out, even in American history. Like, it's weird that they went so against it in this episode, because in previous episodes, they've been very like, we are the peacekeeping organization. We are America. We go to this country. We tell them to be peaceful, and if they don't, we blow them off the face of the earth.
Well, here it's like, well, maybe blowing people off the face of the earth is a bad thing, and maybe we should, like, figure out how to live together as, like, you know, a common community where we, like, respect each other and, you know, can get along, as opposed to trying to, like, you know, impose our you know, ideologies on each other through force.
Well, this is one of the things that's kind of important to look at, because you're trying to wind up with the same basic definitional outcome. You're trying to not have war and violence. Now, you can achieve that through this plan, which is to put in a strong enough peacekeeping organization that you can basically punish war and violence away, control the populations so harshly that they can't enact war and violence, which then is a weird one because the way that you're imposing peace is to act violently, but generally we define out state violence.
Because this is the exception. This is the legitimate violence. Everything other violence is illegitimate.
Which is how you wind up with these weird things of, like, police violence is not considered to be violence because it's supposedly violence in the name of maintaining nonviolence later. State violence usually gets kind of like, state violence is necessary to, you know, preclude other non-state violence.
And so you get to, you know, so you can quickly get a situation where the state violence is not really serving the people anymore, and so you get this. You you end up with, you know, either the, you know, modern police in the U.S. or the peacekeepers in Farscape.
Yeah, it really depends on what you're doing. Generally, like, I don't know, personal philosophy, violence can sometimes be necessary. It should always be an ultimate last resort, and you should always realize that you have done damage that you're going to need to undo later. But your other idea that Kirk is advocating in this situation, he's kind of going on the we can all just agree to stop having violence, which generally, yes. Practically, you kind of need to get to a point where you have improved the general situation to the point that violence becomes no longer necessary.
Yes, you know, where in order for, you know, basic needs to be met, you know, enacting violence on others isn't, you know, part of the the only option you have. You can instead say, you know, work with somebody else or trade for something, or, you know, you are granted the ability to come up with all the resources you need without much trouble, without having to impose your will on somebody else.
Which, in fact, is like, as scaremongery as modern news tends to be, we are in an unprecedented level of global peace over the last few years on Earth. Like, there's been very, very few wars or major conflicts.
Yeah, we've talked about you know, Cold War and, you know, MAD and all that sort of stuff before, and so people have been kind of getting more and more shy about the destructive side of war on one hand, but also on the other, it's a lot more sensible to work with other people at this point, because then you could both benefit and everyone kind of wins.
Well, it's just become so much easier to, one, we have other problems. I'm not going to get on another giant capitalist rant, but like...
Well, we have lots of problems, so there's still a lot to be sorted out. But
in general, technology has led to such a massive upswing in efficiency of production that it is way, way cheaper and more efficient to get everyone in the world the things that they need to live than it used to be. So it is easier for a nation to have all the things that it needs. And if a nation has all the things that it needs, it doesn't have any particular reason to go to war with another nation. We can bring this down, because when you start talking about global politics, everything starts feeling giant and hard to understand.
Just like a giant Spock.
It's basically the same idea as your stealing a loaf of bread argument.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that we start with the general premise that most people agree on, that stealing is wrong. And you now have someone who stole bread.
Oh no.
How do you stop this? Well, you have a couple of options. You look at why they stole bread, and maybe they stole bread because they are starving or their family is starving. So now you could, in fact, just give them the resources they need to live, and they would stop stealing because they would no longer have a reason to steal things, and stealing is harder than not stealing. So just makes sense there. Or you could go the other route, which is what we usually do now, and say, well, this person who stole something needs to be taken out of society or punished in some way to prevent them from stealing anymore.
And so we are going to make them suffer more because they attempted to not suffer.
Now, theoretically, both of these have the general outcome of that person no longer stealing things. Generally, we've seen the giving someone resources tends to work out better in the long run. But if you are just looking at it in the short term, definitionally, both of these options, either giving the person resources so they don't need to steal, or locking the person away in prison so that they can no longer steal, both of these things have led to this person no longer stealing.
One of them's a little more cruel than the other.
But this is basically a way that you can understand this on a smaller scale. These are the two arguments. Either you lift up everyone so that war and violence is no longer necessary, or you try to control everyone to the point that war and violence is no longer plausible.
Yeah, but there's still going to be the war and violence that you are enacting in order to enforce this will upon the world.
Yeah, and then you also wind up with the problem that you have where peace through violence is achieved by consent, because at a certain point, people need to agree to stop fighting you.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a police force in the streets, like, imposing whatever on people all you want. At a certain point, those people have to basically agree in some fashion to stop fighting you. Otherwise, the peace you will achieve is to have killed them all.
And so there's going to be a lot of bodies or an endless fight between these, the state forces, the non-state forces.
Yeah. So, like, you can have you can even get into a situation, as ludicrous as it would be, where you have, like, a peace officer watching every individual. You have like half the population watching the other half of the population. Until they all agree to stop fighting, there's still going to be violence. Eventually you get to a ludicrous level of control in order to control a situation this completely.
And so it's very much a game that you cannot win. So maybe we should go the other route then.
Yeah, it's a game that you cannot win, and then people start using the fact that it doesn't work to justify doing it more.
And that's ridiculous.
I mean, it's ridiculous when you say it like that. I see you can wind up stuck in these ideas. You're like, this is a good idea. I have a good idea. We're going to send a global police force out to, like, make sure that wars stop happening in other countries. That sounds great. Then it stops working. And you're like, well, this was a sound idea. We just must need more police force.
So double the budget, double the manpower, get some new, space lasers involved there. And get ourselves a helicarrier that's,
Which generally, as we learned recently with, Black Lives Matter protests and people looking more closely into these things, police budgets tend to be
massive.
Millions of billions of dollars more than anything else happening in a state budget.
It's like, so the police are getting this massive fraction of the budget, while this tiny sliver over here is dealing with housing and making sure people have food and medical access and all that. And so, what if we were to inverse this equation here, so that these other things were getting lot of funding so that people would be not motivated to steal, that loaf of bread anymore. And then we wouldn't need that police force because, well, there's no crime anymore.
Well, you wind up with two fundamentally different philosophical takes. See, we are operating from a framework that crime and violence and things is something that people do because of other circumstances. The general idea of a police force is predicated on the philosophical idea that people will just do violence unless stopped.
Yeah, sort of a, everyone wants to, engage in the purge or something like that, and so we have to...
Yeah, it's non-situational. It doesn't matter how good of a situation you're in, you are still going to do this. And then you wind up with weird evidence like hedge fund managers still do illegal things to gain more money even though they should have enough to live. It points to some other holes in the system. It gets complicated. But those are your basic ideas. Either people's violent and, antisocial behavior is predicated on the situation that they're in, or there are just some people who are going to engage in antisocial behavior no matter what you do.
And I guess the, police only sort of option sort of implies that that's every criminal has this intense moral failing about them that they are destined to become criminals. And so we must, actively be on the lookout for all these members of our society who are lurking around every corner that are going to be causing trouble at some point, and thus we could never, let down our endless vigilance because then they'll come out and, spook us or something.
Well, yeah, even in America, our general idea of police force is based in a very religious, moral philosophy. Like, the reason that we call our prisons penitentiaries is because they were designed as places for you to go and be penitent for your sins.
It was only in Indiana Jones did the penitent man pass.
Yeah, and only because if you kneel, you don't get your head cut off by a giant whirly buzzsaw.
Oh, this is getting into a weird metaphor as far as the criminal justice system.
It is. And also, that part of the movie always bugged me, because, I get the whole, a penitent man kneels so you aren't going to get hit by the, head-level buzzsaw. But when are you supposed to figure out you also need to do a forward flip?
Yeah, that's not entirely clear. I guess just keep all your momentum and keep going forward and hope for the best.
Yeah. The penitent man does a cartwheel.
So anyway, back to criminal justice and trying to impose order on a much more complicated world than that.
Yeah, just generally, you have this, it's control versus cooperation, sort of. You either are trying to manage everyone to impose your own version of control on people so that they will do what you want and everything will work out fine, or you trust people enough that if you just generally improve things and can work out a general consensus of how you want things to be, stuff can be that way.
So I'll be frank and say that I'm not really in either camp, but I do lean definitely more on the let's cooperate and try to figure stuff out here. It's very good.
You wind up with some very complicated situations.
It's sort of like the taxonomic, sort of complications. In fact,
I do believe that if we improved everyone's situation to a certain point and eliminated as much suffering as possible, we would no longer run into many of these situations. You are going to always run into outlier situations where something generally awful happens. But I think overall, we need to we have such a skewed value system at the minute that we don't actually value individual people not suffering.
Yes.
If we valued and prioritized the alleviation of suffering, we'd wind up in a much better situation than thinking suffering is excusable in so many situations because it's going to lead to something else, or it's just better, or even the very horrible idea that because suffering is unavoidable, it's fine and excusable.
Let's change the world. Let's make it better. Let's prioritize, treating people cool, people and be nice to them.
We talked about this in another episode recently, but I keep getting in this discussion with some friends that, the world's big. You as an individual can't always affect meaningful change, and that can feel disheartening. But if you can see where the wrong things are wrong and not excuse them just because they exist, then when change happens, you can be ready for it and you can either help or at least not be one of the people who's keeping things from changing. Which is also important. We miss out on this when we talk about activism and things. You have a few people who are activists who are actively trying to change stuff. But the important thing that actually leads to things changing is that a lot of people have stopped trying to not have it change.
So, if you want to keep the status quo, sorry, but for the rest of us, let's actually try to, we don't, even if you're not being super active as far as, trying to change the world, not being in the way of change is a good first step.
See, that's not much harder. In fact, it's easier. We keep telling people that you have to be like a super activist leader and whatever, and that's great, but not everyone can be in that position.
Some folks, have day-to-day to worry about. That's more important because, they have to eat.
What's a lot easier than having to do a thing is not doing a thing.
Yep.
So all you have to do is not try to prevent things from changing. And you're that's doing less things. It's easier.
Yeah, don't become a soldier for the status quo just because you're afraid of, things might not be perfect if if anything changed, because guess what? If anything changed, things might actually end up better.
Perfect is an illusion anyway.
Yes. Don't be keeping yourself in an unqualified local minimum when there's much better places to be on as far as our...
A perfect world definitionally precludes change.
Change, it kind of happens.
Mm-hmm. So, all right.
Make good use of it.
We had to wrap up because we've been talking about all these things for too long, so...
But I haven't even had the chance to talk about my critique of the dictatorship of the proletariat in Marxism.
I'm sure we'll get a chance.
Another time, perhaps.
I'm pretty sure there's 4 or 5 next-gen episodes where we'll get to that.
All right, go.
All right, right now, so that we don't stretch to 2 hours on social critique, it's time for the galaxy's favorite game show! Woo!
Hey everybody, welcome back to the galaxy's favorite game show. I hope everyone's having a good time today. Our various contestants have been racking up plenty of points this week, and some of these contestants are a little taller than usual, but I think their points still count. They still are deserving of good stuff here. So we got our first prize to hand out, which is the Kill First, Try Diplomacy second prize, which goes to Stavros and Angmar's people's plan to bring peace to the galaxy, because apparently enforcing violence is their first choice as opposed to, diplomacy. What do they win, Gipwin?
They win some awesome tripods. Because, this is what happens if Mars Attacks gets interrupted before Mars Attacks. Or War of the Worlds, rather.
We were planning to go invade that planet over there, but we got sick first. Huh. Usually it happens afterwards. So maybe their tripods will be even better, because now we're going to be immune to the disease that killed them all off.
That is true. That is the problem. There's always another disease.
Yes.
Or you wind up in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen 2, where it turns out the disease was actually genetically modified purposefully to kill the Martians.
Dun, dun, dun. Wait, they made a second movie of that?
It's not a movie, the books.
Oh, the books, okay.
They go to Dr. Monroe from the island of Dr. Monroe, and he cobbles together a bunch of different bacterias, and then they infect the Martians.
That works. But Dr. Monroe's not on our game show today, so moving on. Our second prize is the Cat Burglar Prize, which goes to Kirk, Sulu, and McCoy when they go back and try to rescue Spock, because they try to sneak around, but then they kind of get themselves noticed because they try to kidnap Angmar. But anyway, what do they win, Gepwin?
They win some different outfits. We've done this before. Every time they go cat burgle something to sneak into someplace, they're still wearing bright red outfits.
Do not look at me. My uniform makes me hard to look at. Look somewhere else, please, guys. Ho-ho.
They were still bad at sneaking into places by Next Generation, but at least they put on black clothes.
Yes, Worf, you're in your ninja outfit. Picard, you're in your ninja outfit. And Beverly, you're in your ninja outfit. Now we're going to spend like half an episode climbing through caves. And, well, they still found us anyway because of a trap. But anyway.
Also, they should have brought their cat crewman.
Oh, yeah.
Where'd she go when they're cat burglaring?
Well, I guess, different shifts, maybe? I don't know. Our third and final prize for today is the I Think I'm a Clone Now, which goes to Spock for having now a giant duplicate of himself that I guess just now kind of exists in the Star Trek universe and is available if they ever need him to come back, I guess. What does they win, Gepwin? Actually, both of them win.
Spock gets some incredibly awkward family reunions. Especially by the time you get to the frickin' Kelvin timeline. Now you've got young, different Spock, who, I saw him in Heroes first, so he's always going to be the weird bad guy from Heroes.
Yeah, the psycho killer with all the power collecting.
So you got him, and then you got old Spock, but probably also clone Spock. And have they even found the frickin' gateway to forever by the Kelvin timeline? Because you get young Spock in there, too. No one knows what the heck happened to Spock's dad by the time you get here. It's all this.
It's all a little convoluted, and... yeah. So Giant Spock, maybe someday you'll come in and rescue us all. Maybe in season 5 of Discovery or something like that.
Yeah, is that going to be the end of the ultimate series finale to Discovery? Just, oh no, what will happen? Oh, look, Giant Spock.
He's going to punch the giant monster that was going to eat all the time-space continuum. Anyway, that's all the prizes we got for today. Take us away, Gepwin.
Mega Spock versus Godzilla. Fire breath is entirely illogical. This metaphor is illogical. Giant lizard metaphor for nuclear weapons.
It's illogical to be in Star Trek because we've already had our post-apocalyptic period.
Okay, thanks everyone for indulging whatever that was on the galaxy's favorite game show. Oh my God! I don't know. I don't.
So do you want to have sympathy for this guy?
Which guy?
The devil.
The next guy.
Sympathy for the devil. Fun song.
Yeah. Next episode.
We sort of genre bend here quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there's pilgrims, and yeah, this next episode is called The Magics of Megas Tau.
Megas 2?
Yeah, Megas 2, Megas Tau, depends on how you pronounce this.
Well, there's no A in there, so I don't go with the A option myself. There's a guy with little horns and some hooves, and there's some people with masks on, and they're kind of creepy, and there's some magic going on.
A witch trial, literal witch trial with magic and in a pentagram.
Yep.
And I'm looking at a picture here. They drilled an extra armhole in the stocks for their 3-armed lieutenant.
Oh yeah, we have to have special setup for him.
Yep. Yep.
It's all we can really say at this point. I guess we'll find out more later.
There's is there a magical Asian woman that Sulu winds up with? That doesn't seem like it's going to be good.
Awkward, isn't it?
Looks like Kirk gets to use magic.
Yep. I see Spock
drawing a pentagram.
He's also I see another picture with him holding out his hands and playing chess or something like that. Maybe with magic powers.
Yeah, I see Spock drawing a pentagram and things. Spock says witchcraft. Spock says witch rights.
So I have my doubts, but I don't think Spock is actually Wiccan.
Probably not. The philosophies don't seem to line up quite the same.
It's a little different. Anyway, the Magics of Megas 2. That's what we're doing next time. This has been we've been really goofy this episode.
This is going to be even more goofy. Also, why did they draw his pectoral muscles like that?
So you could flex?
But they're just weird squares on top of his rib cage. Go look up look up some screenshots from the Magics of Mangus 2, because the anatomy on this devil dude just doesn't work. He's a rib cage on top of abs with pecs just shoved on top of it.
It's like, some sort of alien design, but he's supposed to be human-ish.
It looks like the way an action figure's connected, where like the rib cage section is a different piece than the ab section.
There's like a little rubber band in there, so you can like pull them up slightly and then rotate them around a few times, and then suddenly let go, and they circle back several times over as they spin around.
And then the rubber band snaps because they haven't made action figures that way since the 70s,
and so you're like, oh, now my devil man is apparently not a thing. Hey, that's an anime, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Magic. Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, the Star Trek Magical Mystery Tour. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcasts, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that is now, no longer exists.